Hello, I think we're live now. Yippee! Hopefully, y'all can hear us fine and absolutely well. Thank y'all for joining us. This is the Inclusive Narratives panel, which involves disability and queer identity in fiction podcast. Thank y'all so much for joining us on the AuFiCon 2026. Can't believe it's already 2026. Ayo. Let us go ahead and get our panelists introduced. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Rowan Odom. I am a network creator, audio person, all that kind of stuff. And I was a host last year for some panels as well. So I had a great time doing that, and I'm excited to do it so again. So let's go just in order as I see y'all on the screen. Finch, if you want to introduce yourself first, that would be lovely.
Yeah, hello. My name is Finch Smallsies. My pronouns are he, him. I am the creator of Podcast Book Club, and I also have a sci-fi podcast in production called Space Specs. I guess I will pass the torch along.
Heck yeah. Go ahead, Alicia.
Hello, my name's Alicia E. Goranson. I am different from the Alicia L. Goranson, who is a famous person who was on the TV show Roseanne a long time ago. I am, in fact, not her. I have been doing creative stuff for a long period of time, but audio drama specifically, I've been doing since 2008, where I did my first show, The Mask of Inanna, which got a 2012 Parsec Award for, and let me get the exact terminology here, best speculative fiction audio drama long form. That was
Mm.
wonderful, and I hate to rub it in, but we beat out We're Alive that year, so very proud of that.
Hey.
Impressive, impressive for sure. Thank you so much, Alicia. Daisy,
Thank
do
you.
you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello. My name is Daisy McNamara. I'm a podcast producer mainly for Bloody FM. I also run my own company, Eel Song Studios. You might know me from shows like Eeler's Choice, Gospel of Haven, SCP Archives, Poe Evermore, or Mayfair Watcher Society, and a little bit of this and that here and there. I've been doing podcasts for about getting on 6 years now. My pronouns are he, him, and she, her.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daisy. Thank you all, and thank you all for being here as well. I'm super excited to get into this topic, which is one that can be uncomfortable for people. So I'm excited to kind of show that, we're here, we're queer, as they might say. Um, and we have a few other topics to cover. So, first thing we're gonna give a kind of overview of what this panel is going to kind of contain and what it's going to talk about today. We're going to talk about physical and neurodivergent disabilities. So, what you see on the outside versus what you feel and, how your brain works on the inside. As well as just queerness identities in audio drama. So, specifically people who aren't cishet kind of normative in the audio drama space. So, first thing I would like to give as sort of the presenter of for my panelists, are there any specific physical disabilities or neurodivergent disabilities that y'all feel are represented well in audio dramas, or do you have any specific examples of those? Finch, do you want to start us off if you can think of any?
Hmm. I think I think when we talk about disability that we see in audio drama right now, we definitely see more neurodivergence. I think
Mm,
from a creation standpoint, it's a little bit immediately easier to tie into your writing. And I also think there is a point to be made that there is a lot of neurodivergent people creating audio drama. So even if they're just writing their own experiences, those characters, even if they're not written to be neurodivergent, they are because they're written by a neurodivergent person. So I think, yeah, I think we definitely see more neurodivergent characters versus physical disabilities in audio drama currently.
mm, mm. And do you have any like favorite neurodivergent characters that you can think of that come to mind?
Not off the top of my head, honestly. I should have
That's
made a
okay.
list. I
That's
didn't
okay.
think.
Lists are always
It's a
good for that, honestly.
it's a
Me
good thing
too.
I did make a list.
Thank you,
So Alicia, do you want to give us some examples as well?
I'm just slamming that list into chat right now. So
Perfect.
we would one of the really good ones recently. Which was it? Uh, which one was it? Okay, I'll just go on and plug my own character, Cassandra Davril, who is a neurodivergent woman, trans woman who happens to get involved in vampires. Of course, this is not a PG-13 show, so I can't talk more about it. But the her whole system is that she is able, to ask questions to people who normally, neurotypical people would not ask questions to, and she would not ask the sort of questions that a neurotypical person would ask. Um, I find that it was the breathing space episode, I think, Daisy,
Mm.
that you recommended. Can you talk a little bit about that, Daisy? I don't want to leave but you are the one who recommended
By
that
all
one.
means. One specifically, I think I can't remember the name of one. It was written by Cale Brown in season 4, which has a very well done BPD protagonist. The name of it is on the list. Thank you, Alicia. The episode that I actually was lucky enough to be involved with, so I remember it well, is You Can Hear the Whistle Blow, best autistic character I've
That was it.
seen written in audio drama. Clarity Marie's daughter, my absolute beloved. I will say I'm biased because I, again, was involved in that episode. But I was involved in the episode because I read the script for it, I proofread it, and then went, I would sell a kidney. Please. So, very well done character written by Ash Seguente on Breathing Space.
Highly recommend.
Absolutely, absolutely. Alrighty, some great recommendations. And yes, if y'all want to check out that fantastic list that Alicia posted in the Twitch chat, that sort of has a syllabus of audio fictions that contain either neurodivergent or physical disabilities, and just some absolute amazing recommendations on there. So very, very glad to have that. And I totally believe in plugging your own stuff, so please do that. Because we are here to talk about the stuff we're into. So amazing, amazing examples there, guys. And without going into too much private detail or anything, I would love to ask my panelists, why is it important to have those representations on audio drama and audio fiction? Why is it important to see that neurodivergency and physical disabilities represented in a way where some people, even ourselves, might feel a kinship towards them? Finch, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, as we all know, people with disabilities are also people. And just because sometimes stories aren't the most polished and, rainbows and unicorns and positive doesn't mean that it isn't important to reflect the reality that we, deal with and live with day to day. Just because it's not a nice experience doesn't mean that it isn't an experience that some people deal with.
Absolutely, absolutely. Alicia, do you want to head us off with that one?
Oh, the world, people in general are so complex. That's one of the wonderful things about audio drama is that we're able to, showcase a whole vast, spectrum of people, and people who are neurodivergent are just as, complex and amazing and witty, and they have all sorts of insights that, neurotypical people may not have, and it's absolutely wonderful to be able to showcase, both the conflicts that happen and both the ways that neurotypicals and neurospicy people can be, can work together and can help each other out. I absolutely think it's important uh, to recognize uh, that, and additional with physical disabilities or other things as well. Uh, it's important that we recognize that that perspective also provides us, folks who may not have similar physical disabilities with understandings like, oh, this is just something that I'm used to. Oh, I see. I need to, adjust, or I need to be aware of, or maybe in some way are being affected by, the situation. It really depends.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Yeah. Bringing those
we're
open
amazing.
perspectives. Yeah, absolutely. Bringing those other perspectives to, media in all forms is super important. So definitely good points there made. Daisy, did you want to add anything to that?
I would actually. So this is something I've spoken about with my boss Pacific, more in the context of queer identities, of that our work might be the first exposure someone has to a certain
Mm,
identity, especially because a lot of our demographic is younger. So trying to provide that education to let that people know. And I think specifically with disability, physical disability is the one that's more personal to me, but with neurodivergence as well, um, people don't think about it if they
mm,
don't have it. It's not because they
mm-hmm,
don't care. It's not part of their lives. You don't walk through a restaurant and think, those tables are too close together. A wheelchair can't fit.
mm,
Unless you have a friend who's a chair user or a
mm,
chair user, that kind of thing. So I think it's useful to introduce these things to people who might not understand them, and to people who might not understand their own disabilities. If I had known what my symptoms were earlier, I would have saved myself several years of
mm,
the rounds of doctor's visits and have you lost weight about it, you know?
mm.
So I feel like showing those is important to abled people and to disabled people, and to queer people and to non-queer people, just to introduce them to the concept of this for the people in their lives, and be able to say, no, wait, I should slow down a little bit, huh? Maybe I shouldn't walk so fast, that kind of
Mm,
thing.
mm. Yeah, beautifully put, Daisy. I think that's extremely important to be able to recognize if you're feeling with a similar thing. So sorry, something just scraped against my roof. It's very windy here, guys. But yeah, beautifully put. I definitely think, you know, having those experiences, learning from other people and other viewpoints is incredibly important. Um, great points there, guys. Okay, so now we've kind of gone overview of, you know, why it's important to have those representations in media, and why we feel like it's, a little bit more commonplace in audio fiction maybe, but still not where it needs to be. um, if that's the case, what kind of identities do you still feel are underrepresented in fiction podcasts? I know, Finch, you already brought up the point that, a lot of physical disabilities aren't brought up as much as they could be. Do you think there's a better way to go about that? Or do you think that we could have some other insight on that from a physical disability standpoint?
Oh, well, I think my ideal answer is just that there would be more people with physical disabilities.
Mm,
And as a starting point, that can be difficult. I was actually having a conversation recently talking about this because I'm an amputee and I occasionally use mobility aids.
mm,
And even if you look at things like sound design, trying to find sound effects for wheelchairs or canes or things is actually not easy. And the
absolutely.
ones that are there are not always ideal. And even if you
I
have
have
them,
the
you might have
mobility
them
aids. I
for
will
like
record them
walking
for
on.
you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So then you might have, a sound effect for like one type of setting. Like you have it for walking on grass or walking on gravel, and you don't have it for the range that you see in like normal footsteps.
Mm,
Or even things like not even just using mobility aids, but like uneven gaits and things like that. You don't really get that with
Mm.
footstep SFX either because it's not easy
mm-hmm,
to do.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think sound is actually a pretty key thing that could be expanded on.
Yeah, that's great points. I have also been, the victim of not being able to find mobility aid noises for my show. And I remember eventually being like, okay, I'll do it myself because, you know, it's easier to do it yourself sometimes with the lack of resources that are out there as far as a signed sound library and SFX Foley artist and all that kind of stuff. So great points there. Daisy, did you want to elaborate on that with physical disabilities in specific?
Yeah, I definitely agree that the mobility aids is a hurdle. I have recorded my wheelchair and crutches and canes many a time for various people. Free to a good home, send me a DM. Um, Anything to get more of physically disabled characters out there. But I also think that this this is what is jokingly called the blonde white twink problem, which is that you have to describe what a character looks like and you have to
Mm,
describe their identities somehow in dialogue in a way that sounds natural to avoid audience assuming they are conventionally attractive, thin, white.
mm,
And there's a level of what Kale, my friend, calls people don't talk like this disease, in which you don't walk up to a person and say, "Hi, I'm disabled."
mm-hmm.
Now, people will walk up to you and say, "What's wrong with you?" That happens once a week, but it's not something that you. It's something that you have to work a little bit to naturally include in dialogue. It can be done, but it's something that has to be stated on screen
Mm-hmm.
if you want it to be a thing that audience will realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think going back to Finch's point too, if we had more resources that were readily available for sound editors specifically to be able to, put in mobility aids, put in a different gait or any sort of wheelchair sounds, anything like that, or a white cane user, anything like that, could at least give the hint, as it were, to the audience that, there might be a physical disability at play here. There might be something else that does not make this person the typical, stereotype that some people might visualize in their head. Um, so definitely, and want to see more people represented that way. And as Finch said too, having more people just play people in audio dramas who have physical disabilities, it's very important. Alicia, did you want to give us any guidance about us neurodivergent disabilities in podcasts, how those could be more represented, or what you might feel is underrepresented as far as that goes?
I mean, it's not like it's not like I feel like calling it out as per se. I just feel like having just more characters who just happen to be, neurodiverse as well as neurotypical.
Mm,
And you can also base it on if you have. It depends whether or not you write your characters based on actors that you know, or if you just write your characters based on whoever's in your head at the time. Um, I yeah, I'm not especially worried about the a lack of neurodiverse characters. I think that there are plenty kicking about, especially because creative types tend to be neurodiverse. Shh, don't tell anybody. But
a little bit.
uh, um, uh, as far as mobility aids and stuff like that, I have done like the last episode of last season of my show does have the main character using a cane, and one of the problems with that is that I had to make some. I managed to get some on one of my sites, and you have to
Mm,
be careful about like what uh materials that they're walking on and whether or not there's
Mhm.
reverb and all that sort of stuff. And um it would be a lot nicer if I had a better, access to people who possibly are in this chat who can help out with this sort of thing. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
If I may, actually, I personally would love to see more neurodiverse characters of, shall we say, more stigmatized conditions, because we see a lot
mm,
of the more common conditions, especially among creators.
mm,
I would love to see more of people with things like OCD, schizophrenia, DID, stuff like that. Things that are less well understood and, shall we say, less well liked in pop culture. I'd love to see more positive or realistic interpretations of those kinds of neurodiversity, personally.
Oh yeah,
mhm,
my character ends with spoilers with DID, and
mm,
it's a very healthy relationship.
Mm.
And also I'm very curious about what are they called? Folks who are um, able, for example, we're not supposed to go into stuff, but that we do yourselves. But I do sometimes. I go nonverbal, and going nonverbal
Mm,
is a thing that you can show that you can do um, in what's it called in audio drama. So
mm-hmm.
that is uh, j- uh, just as important a thing as anything else to show.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty of things that could be represented more freely. Absolutely, Daisy. Especially one of some of those less pretty to the public eye uh, neurodivergencies. Um, and also, yeah, there's plenty of ways to represent those in audio fiction that people could think about more, especially I think if they have people who are involved that are either neurodivergent or physically disabled for the specific thing that you're writing on and everything. Which leads me to asking for any of these different identities that people might relate to. Um, do y'all think it is important to speak with verified sources to accurately represent these identities? And if
Yes.
so, how do you go about doing that? Daisy, please lead us off.
Yeah, short answer, yes. Long answer, we've been lucky enough on shows like Ealer's Choice and such, where we had a major character with a mobility disability. We've got that one covered between the two of us, and a visual impairment. And we're able to both ask people that we personally knew to serve as sensitivity consultants, but also if you don't happen to know someone, there are often a lot of helpful resources online written by people with certain disabilities about writing disabilities and their pet
Mm,
peeves in how those disabilities are handled. Visual impairments specifically, the like feel your face thing apparently is one that comes up a lot, that a lot of visually impaired people are like, stop saying we do this.
yes,
um
absolutely.
that kind of thing. So um there's a lot of people who you can consult. There's a lot of resources online. If you don't know anyone personally,
Hmm.
I would heavily encourage someone not to let not knowing someone personally stop you from including this kind of representation in your work. You can find it. There are websites, there are YouTube channels, there are plenty of people who are happy to answer questions.
Mm, absolutely. Reaching out and not letting, personal experiences stop you from having that sort of representation is super important for sure. Alicia, did you want to add anything to that?
Not especially. Go ahead.
Awesome. What about you, Finch? Did you have anything?
Yeah, I think for the most part I agree. I also think I want to add the caveat of I haven't seen this happen in audio drama, but I think sometimes people writing something that they're not personally familiar with then use those resources as like an end all be all instead of ever doing their own research. And I
Mm,
also think that people should do their own research, talk when you can. And I think personal accounts are really important, but you can't use somebody else as I think your only method of understanding.
mm, absolutely. Absolutely. And
Multiple
uh,
sources, definitely.
yes, multiple sources as if you were doing a research paper, even. It's sort of like doing
Crazy.
that for any time you're writing, that you're not familiar with experience. Crazy. Um, we do have a question in the
It's
chat
almost like
that
you can research
pertains to
things and
this.
learn.
Mm hmm.
You're
Mm
very
hmm.
right. Sorry,
It's
that
almost like
that
that's
sounded
important.
so mean. I was trying to say you were right, and I
No, it's
realized as
okay.
I said it.
You're fine. You're fine. We do have a question in the chat that sort of relates to this as well regarding those resources that you could find. Would you recommend checking out psychology textbooks or any other like medical papers regarding those kind of things?
I wouldn't personally, because I feel like that's very focused on diagnostic criteria rather than personal experience, but I
Hmm.
would defer to my colleagues if you feel differently than I do.
I would also agree with you.
No.
I would definitely try to find somebody online who's able to provide the 101 and it's thankless work providing the 101 to people who are not familiar with a particular disability or condition
Mm-hmm.
is an ongoing process because you're doing it all the time uh,
Mm,
but you know so thank these people whoever are doing it. Look it up.
Mm.
Look up, use your favorite non AI generated search engine.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly right though. I agree with that as well, being that medical books and research papers and, psychology textbooks are always going to be a little bit more black and white than how people experience things on a day-to-day basis, and everyone's experiences are so different. That's why it's important to get viewpoints from everyone you can. It's very important, I think, to, like Alicia was talking about before, everyone is amazingly different and all has their own experiences, all has their own ways of dealing with things, dealing with these identities or disabilities that they might experience from day to day. So, especially if you're trying to portray someone who is going day to day with a disability, I think that goes hand in hand with each other. So, yeah, perfect, guys. Thank y'all so much for that. And thank you for the question in the chat as well. Um, so, regarding this, um, as a lot of y'all have experience writing or, doing editing regarding these different disabilities or identities regarding queerness as well, um, what is some of the most common or important questions that you get when writing and representing these different identities? And this can be about queerness. We're talking about, trans rights. We're talking about gay rights. We're talking about neurodivergencies, all of that kind of thing. What are y'all getting the most questions about when you're doing those kind of shows?
May I ask, do you mean questions that we're asking as we research or questions that people ask us?
Questions that people ask y'all regarding,
Got it.
like,
Thank you.
how you even get into the mindset of putting this different media out and everything.
Hmm. Any of y'all have anything or?
Alicia, do you want to lead us off?
So, in terms of queerness is amazingly specific to where you are. A queer
Mm.
in Boston, is going to be a lot different than a queer person in Seattle. Is going to be different than a queer person in Illinois. It's going to be different than a queer person in Florida. There are so many queer people in Florida. My heart goes out to y'all. Uh, yeah, I
Thank
know.
you.
Uh, but no, your local queer scene is going to be its own. It's going to be built from its own system of elders, system of like what events, what spaces are available. Back in
Mm.
Boston, we had a thing called Gender Crash. That was a long time ago. If you look it up online, I guess there's some archives and information. But it was a slam poetry event, and there are slam poetry events everywhere
Mm.
that you can do. There are some at bars, there are some at community centers, and that can be if you want to know about a local queer center, local queer community's identity, definitely go to a bar. Go to oh, I'm sorry, this is a PG-13. Go to a milk bar. Go to the
Soda bar.
yeah,
Your
go to
local
the
location.
coffee shop, your local
Mm-hmm.
location, and just hang out with people. Just get an idea, get some flyers. It's all good. That will give you the texture, because what you
Mm.
need to do is when you are ever writing anything about like a queer scene or whatever, or somebody who's not in a queer scene, you should know what they feel like they're being separated from. It's like, oh, I wish
Mm.
I could be doing this thing. I wish I could be doing that thing, and then it could be that neither of those things are being done in this particular scene. It really
Mm.
depends, but um, in terms of adding neurodiversity, neurospicy, whatever we want to call it, in there, I would advocate, um, as I said before, getting to know people, just like just talking with folks at events, or just reading. We write a lot. We
Mm.
we really we really write a lot. I don't think you're going to run out of material in terms of the way the different neurospicy brains work, and it can be high performing people like me, or it can be people who prefer, not to get overwhelmed, because, getting overwhelmed by sight, sound, or, um, spaces is definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, all of this is great material, by the way. If you want to do an audio drama,
Mm-hmm.
this is all fantastic. Please take it, steal this idea,
Mm-hmm.
steal this book. It's all good. Um, Essentially, I would say that if you are yourself not neurodiverse and you want to write someone neurodiverse, Good news, we've exploded. There's so many different types of folks available, and we like to talk about ourselves. I will just leave it at that.
I love that. I love that. Everyone, whether they know it or not, likes to talk about themselves, and neurodivergent people are the same. We
Mood.
also like to talk about ourselves. Mood. Finch, do you want
I'm
to add
game.
anything to that?
Yeah, I think so. With my show, Space Specs, we have a queer platonic polycule that's pretty like central to the story, and not so much in questions that other people were asking us, but when Quills and I were originally working on the pilot episode, we were kind of also asking ourselves a lot about like how does a relationship like this translate to a world where these characters are they're in an apocalypse. So honestly, like societal definitions of like romance and relationships are not even number one on their radar. So how do we
Absolutely.
portray like aromantic and asexual narratives and this queer platonic relationship in a way that feels true to the characters and true to the story
Mm,
without it seeming really odd in the landscape of like they're not really sitting down and having long conversations about how they're labeling their experiences.
absolutely. Yeah. Especially, I think, with a romanticism and asexuality, it's like we don't say it explicitly, because why would
It's
we?
hard to define a negative.
Yeah, exactly. So, and
And if you don't
especially
define that negative, even if you do define that negative, people will interpret it in a allo sexual, allo romantic
Mm.
light. Ask me how I know.
Exactly. And Finch, to your point, especially about it being like sort of a post-apocalyptic scenario, I know a lot of shows dive into that sort of realm as well, where things are happening all the time. How are we supposed to delve into these sort of things that are not the top priority of the characters? So having either those just realization that people are more different than people might think is also great. Daisy, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree with Finch, especially in terms of aromantic and asexual, because my show, The Gospel of Haven, is one big metaphor for aromantic identity in a meat suit. Um, and definitely having that and dealing with misconceptions around those identities. I once had someone tell me I couldn't hate something because aromantic people can't feel that strongly.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
he really thought that, for instance. So being able to provide a little understanding of what these experiences are like.
Mm.
I don't get asked as much about physical disability or neurodivergence. I will occasionally get audience negative response to the existence of physical disability within a narrative, to which I can reply with my whole chest, get over it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people will interpret someone's experience of their disability as being annoying, for instance. So it's not something that is always going to land well with audiences. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it or that it's not important.
Right.
But it is might perhaps something to be prepared for going in, that might happen as a worst case scenario. Not that it happens very often, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not your fault if it happens, is what I'm saying.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're lucky in this space to be surrounded by a lot of people who relate, or people who have some sort of representation of disabilities, neurodivergency, etc. But we're still putting it out there into the ether, so anyone can find it. So
Hmm.
definitely being prepared, but also knowing that not everyone is going to be like that, and that shouldn't stop you anyway. Exactly right, Daisy. I love that.
Don't read the comments.
Don't read the comments, guys. Don't do it.
I'm gonna can't stop me.
No.
I
Well,
do,
if
but
you
it's a
read them,
mistake.
yeah, if you read them, don't let them dictate your whole thing, right? That's the most important thing. Very good points, guys. Thank you so much for those answers. And I do have one that's a little bit tricky and deals with specifically neurodivergencies. Um, uh, in this space, or in, honestly, it's been a recent media comeuppance with self-diagnosing. As we know, a lot of people on TikTok and stuff like that are always like, oh, that's exactly me. That's exactly right. That kind of thing. Do you think portraying different neurodivergent disabilities has a potential to raise misconceptions and cause people to self-diagnose? And if is that a good thing in some cases? Alicia, I'd love to start with you on this one.
Is that our responsibility?
Mm,
Mm.
I don't think so. In terms, if we were perpetuating misunderstandings, or as I like to call it, young Sheldonisms,
mm,
um, that would be a problem with us, and we shouldn't do that. But in
mm,
terms of presenting multiple different ways of being neurodiverse, and then you know I don't see that being a problem in terms of people saying, "Oh, that could be me," or "That could be me," and
mm,
because I mean, yes, but you know, um, it's always the question, is like, as a show creator, as somebody who's putting media out there,
mm,
do we have a responsibility to be honest? Yes. Do we have a responsibility for representing the people who we portray in our shows, to the most truthful that we can possibly do, to the most to show them as actual people with actual conditions, and not to, what's the terminology where you where you basically, oh, the well of loneliness situation with gay people. They're like, oh,
mm,
they're so sad. Oh, those poor people with disabilities. Oh, they feel, avoiding that kind of that kind of bullshit. Oh, sorry.
mm.
uh
Kind of
Bullbust.
pitying sort of
Yes. uh
situation.
Not, no, but what things that we do is, I do think we put out a lot of good representation, and I don't think that it's our responsibility to educate the audience about them more than we're already doing. To
Mm,
provide, um, to basically like grind the show to a halt, or at the beginning or the end of the show, saying, hey, this person portrays, such and such neurodiversity. Just because you may, reflect some of these symptoms or characteristics, that not necessarily mean that you have this. That's not something that we're really responsible for. And the
mm.
biggest thing is, I think, is that we're such a small, itsy bitsy. Here's
Itsy
this is
bitsy.
this is like how many people are listening to Night Vale? So many people are listening to Magnus Archives. Is how
Mm-hmm.
many people are listening to us. So I don't see us as being a specifically, you know targetable um demographic for education,
Mm,
or at least with the expectations of
Depends.
education. Yes, we do educate. That's important. I like doing that. I like educating. At the same time, I am not responsible for people taking the wrong lessons from what I teach.
mm,
Very well
mm.
said.
Yeah, very well said. Daisy, did you
Completely
want
with
to
you on
add
that.
anything about that?
Yeah, no, there's a 4-year-old jumping down above my head. Um, I apologize for that. No, I'm completely with Alicia on, we are not our audience's keeper. I also am not a
Mm,
psychologist. I do not deign to tell people what they can and cannot be. If you see your experience in a character and something about that helped you,
mm-hmm.
I'm very happy with that. If that is something that you might want to pursue as perhaps seeking a diagnosis, if that's something that's helpful for you, because I'm not diagnosed on a few things that I'm told by my psychiatrist I have, because I don't want more disabilities on my record in this healthcare
Mm,
system. Um, so having the tools to go look for that, if that's something you want, great, amazing. If you choose not to do that, that is your choice. And if you pull an interpretation from something, I, once the art is in the world, the artist has no control over what the audience takes from it. So
mm.
I'm with Alicia.
Very well said. Very well said. And yeah, America, that's how it be, you know? I get that with not wanting more things on your record, because America is America.
American healthcare. Woo!
Woo!
There is actually an organization that I did some work with who's basically sent me an email asking, "Hey, do you want us to get rid of, all everything that we recorded on you?" And I'm like,
Yeah, please.
that is
Just in
the
case.
situation for our European friends. That is the situation that a lot of Americans are in right now.
Absolutely. Which is
Yeah.
another reason why it's so important to get this kind of media out, because they are being so suffocated right now, especially in the US. Finch, did you have anything to add on about that?
Yeah, I think specifically around the conversation of like the self-diagnosing 14-year-old on TikTok. This is
Mm,
a conversation we've already had many times over regarding like queer identities in media and in shows.
mm,
Um, and the narrative of people saying, "Oh, if this kid sees a gay character on TV, then they're going to be gay." And obviously that is
right.
not how it works. But yeah, I
Absolutely.
think kind of going back to it, it's like I think at the end of the day, representation A helps people feel less alone. B showcases a different reality that other people, do live in that is real to them.
Mm,
And I don't think that, yeah, even if that random kid on TikTok is like, oh yeah, I have ADHD because I saw this character with ADHD and thought that they were like me. That's
mm,
not really hurting anybody. It's teaching that kid a little bit more about themselves, whether or not if at the end of the day it's, diagnosable or not.
mm. Absolutely. So having that representation out is more important than whatever could come of it. And like you
Yeah.
said, if people feel that way about themselves, they might open up new opportunities to explore. And also, who is it hurting, really? If you're just like, yeah, I feel I got a little spiciness in my brain. That's okay. So do we, bro. So do we.
Mhm.
And kind of as a follow up to that question, guys, this is our last question. Um, as far as our stated question, so anyone in the chat, we're going to have a Q&A after this, so if you have any questions specifically, please write them out and we'll try to get to them. For the last question in this sort of bringing it all together, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I would love to get like statements on it. What is your goal and your hope for bringing representation for individuals that can relate to these topics? And that goes for neurodivergencies, physical disabilities, queerness, transness, anything that this whole panel might discuss as far as inclusive narratives. Um, Daisy, do you want to start us off with that one?
If I may, yeah.
Of course.
I think my personal big thesis is this is an okay way to be.
Mm.
That if this is an experience that you have, that you are not alone, that you are not wrong. Personally, in terms of my own disability and my aromantic identity, I didn't know that this was a
Mm.
thing you could be.
Mm.
I just thought there was something wrong with me. And growing up
Right.
aromantic, there is that the surrounding with the knowledge that you are not like the other children. There is something fundamentally wrong with you,
Mm-hmm.
and no one can ever find out. That kind of thing. And that can go for other queer identities as well, but at least personally. And if I had known that this was a thing that you could be, that would have saved me a lot of grief. If I had known that existing in pain every day was not normal,
Mm.
I could have sought help a lot earlier than I did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. So that's my big one of this is what life can be like for people. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's what life is like for you. Maybe it's what life is like for someone in your life. Here's maybe a way that you can make things a little bit easier for
Mm.
that person or for you moving through life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, a lot of us can relate to that feeling of there is something wrong with you when it is just you're not the typical cishet normative person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is completely okay. It is okay to be the way that you are. Um, and if you're experiencing, chronic pain, if you're experiencing something that is negatively impacting your life, to seek help if you would like to, just to see what
Mm-hmm.
can be done for you in a medical world and all of that kind of stuff. Very, very good points there.
even
Um,
without like, if I may
mhm.
just quickly for a second,
Yeah, of course.
without like proper pharmaceutical intervention or stuff, just knowing I could stop. Knowing I can stop and
Mhm.
rest instead of pushing myself to crashing, and then I'm in less pain and more productive, stuff like that. So this is your
Absolutely.
little piece of advice. You can stop. You can rest.
You can rest. The world is not on your shoulders for every hour of the day. You can rest. We promise. All right. Excellent point, Stacey. Thank you so much for that. Finch, did you have a sort of overall statement that you wanted to let us know?
Yeah, I would say overall that Daisy and I are shaking hands because I 1000% agree with all of that. But yeah, I think I would also circle back to just like letting people know that, yeah, it's not a bad way to be, it's not an inherently bad thing, and other people get it. You know, you're not the only one. I
Mm,
also think not only, you know, showcasing it to let people know that they're not alone, but showcasing it to let you know that you can be trans and you can be, I don't know, you could have neurodivergency and you could have chronic pain and you can still like be happy and find a fulfilling life and, you know, do things
Mm-hmm.
you enjoy.
absolutely. Fulfillment is not, just one sort of aspect of life for everyone. It goes hand in hand with different identities, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Alicia, did you want to close us out with one more goal as far as that goes?
Here's my secret. Shh, don't tell anybody. I like making stories about people who would not have their inciting incident if not for their transness, if not for their queerness, if not for their neurospiciness.
Mm,
I want to write stories in which these sort of adventures, these sort of empowering adventures, uh, wouldn't happen to your straight cis, white heteronormative person. I
mm,
want to write stories which are going to be specifically for. And I'm going to give the example of my first book, Supervillains, which was a Lambda Literary finalist. I can't believe I got to say that from back
amazing.
in the day. And the whole point of it is that it all starts because a bunch of superheroes decide to misgender this one trans woman, and they get
Yeah.
locked into a whole thing. And it's just like, yep, yep, this happens, and she would not be in that situation if not for the transphobia and that sort of thing. And then of course
Hmm.
fights the superheroes and wins at the end. That's why they're supervillains. It's because
There we
it was
go.
the whole thing that people, oh no, trans people are considered villains. Oh no, we're terrible. It was
Hmm.
that whole thing. But well, we're just actually just a bunch of nerds who need our medications just as much as anybody else does. uh
Mm.
the show Blood Doll that I do, as I said, for that is specifically if a neurotypical person was in that situation, they would be vampire food. If But of course, our main character is just like, you probably shouldn't exist. Or if you do exist, you introduce all these potential questions into both philosophical and religious discussion, and then
Mm.
proceeds to have those philosophical and religious discussions, which is great.
Amazing.
These are all things that you know are the inciting incident. When we talk about inciting incidents in fiction, we're talking about the moment that propels the story, the thing that everybody that the main character or something around them does that sweeps them into it, is what makes the story happen. And I like
Mm.
that inciting incident to be something which the which has to do with some aspect of the main character which other people do not share, which like the majority don't share. I want to show how we know so much about ourselves, and how we handle ourselves, and a lot of other people can't. Would take them a lot of time if they were, if they found themselves in a lot of our situations. But we're just like, no, we have mechanisms for dealing this sort of thing.
Mm.
Um, so all in all, write what you know, and even better, flaunt it.
Mm. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. We love that. And absolutely, I think there is definitely a solid point there of things would not happen unless they had those identities in the first place, which is what we want to write stories about. That is a great point. Sorry, my cat is doing things. All right, great points there, guys. Thank y'all so much. We are officially at 10 minutes till panel close time. So we did have one um, question from the chat from Aphid. She's fine. She's playing with bags, okay? Aphid asks, how would one go about accurately representing neurodivergence in audio fiction? And how do you feel about neurotypical individuals portraying roles like that? So people who might not have those neurodivergencies or disabilities portraying those roles. Finch, do you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, I guess something to keep in mind when you're writing any character is sometimes, which this is maybe a bit of a non-answer, but I think sometimes people will go about it the wrong way and they're gonna say, "Oh, I want to write an ADHD character." And then you kind of have to take a couple steps back and say, "You're not writing an ADHD character, you're writing a character that has ADHD," you know? I think even if it's something that's pretty integral to who they are as a person, um, maybe look at like how that affects maybe how they view the world and how they interact with the world instead of what the world does to them because of that neurodivergence.
So the interactions of them to the world rather than focusing on the
No, I'm with you
exterior
on that.
forces. Daisy, did you want to give us some more insight on that?
No, I'm pretty much on the same wavelength of I have a bit of a pet peeve when I see some portrayals of different neurodivergencies in fiction in which it's the most socially acceptable traits of that disability placed onto a character rather than a exploration of how that disability allows them to move through the world, of an ADHD character who talks really fast and it doesn't get into RSD, memory issues, social alienation, all that stuff. Just a pet peeve of mine because I prefer stuff that digs in a little bit more. But yeah, dig into the parts that are less commonly portrayed and perhaps less socially acceptable because they will affect the way your character moves through the world.
Very good points there. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Touching on the things that not everyone might realize unless you have that diagnosis, which important for the resourcing methods that we mentioned previously as well. If you're, writing about neurodivergency and you don't have it, do your research, talk to people, do all of that kind of stuff. Alicia, did you have anything else to add on that?
I have another secret. It's important that you understand this. Good writers borrow, great writers steal. Great writers, even better writers, steal from people who they know. So, uh,
Yes.
definitely get to know people like your characters, and you can totally rip them off. They may take issue with this, so you may have to ask them permission for sometimes. But it's always, but then you can just mix and match, you know, aspects of them with other people too. Most of my characters at some point have been actual people, and then as I get better, as I've gotten better as a writer, I was able to, like to create them wholesale. But to start out with, just steal people. It's okay. It's okay to find people who who have various neurodivergencies and to ask them, hey, how would you deal with this in this situation? How would you deal with this if you were overwhelmed? Like in this space, where would you go? Would you go to the bathroom? Would you go, upstairs? Where would be most comfortable for you? How did you get here? How would you take the bus? Would you take, if you had money, would you take a lift so you didn't have to deal with, that sort of, all these questions, and people are willing to answer them for you. It's great. Steal people. It's fantastic.
Most people in books and fiction are based off of people the writer knows, is what I've found. So, absolutely, if you don't know someone and you want to portray someone who is your ideal person in that setting, find someone who is and talk to them, right? We're all about talking to people in this, especially. Very excellent points, guys. All right, one more question here that we have time for, and then we'll go ahead and close us out. How can the social impact of invisible my note went away of invisible disabilities be navigated and portrayed in audio drama? This comes from Quills in the chat.
I do have I do have a recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely,
Um,
Daisy.
go listen to Sinkhole, which is an incredible audio drama about the disabled experience. Specifically a, shall we say, semi-visible physical disability, but it really does well at touching on the social alienation involved, the issues you might have, especially with an invisible disability. I'm speaking more in the physical line of like chronic pain and fatigue. How much that cuts out what you can do, how much that cuts out the jobs you can do. I have a degree in a field that I can't use because I got disabled and I can't stand for 12 hours anymore. That kind of thing. So yeah, that's my whole thing of like lean into what you can do and what you can't, and how that can affect the way you get to meet people and the way you get to move through life.
Absolutely. Very succinct. Thank you, Daisy. And Alicia pointing out that list again. Thank you very much. I do know that Sinkhole is on that list, so great recommendation, Daisy. And very glad to see some semi-visible disabilities being represented as well. Alicia, did you have anything to add on to that?
Just want to make sure that everybody knows about Seen and Not Heard, the
Oh
podcast, which is
yes,
also
so good.
discussed how deaf and hard of hearing folks tend to navigate the world, and it does a fantastic job in making it also the way that that they hear, and have to respond to people, and microaggressions. Oh my gosh, all the microaggressions that exist in these spaces. Uh, which is something that as as queer and other minority statuses that we experience a lot of microaggressions, and we're just not, they just
Yeah.
collapse on you, and it's just like, oh, there's so many. Why does there have to be so
I
many?
never get one more person apologizing to me for how bad it must suck to exist like I do. It will be too
Oh,
goddamn soon.
oh my god, I'm so sorry. Ugh.
It's okay. I
Absolutely.
carry a crutch. I'm armed.
And that
Can you
goes for all of you people out there. Very, very exceptional, Alicia. Thank you so much. Finch, did you want to wrap us up with anything regarding the social impact of that?
I actually don't think I had anything additional to add, just to echo and say that I agree with my co-panelists here. I think they hit about everything I would have said.
Beautiful. Beautiful. We're on
Yippee.
agreement. Yay. Very, very good. Well, thank y'all so much for your insight. I think this was a super educational and insightful panel. I want to thank y'all as panelists for being here, as well as for giving us your point of views regarding the inclusive narratives that we discussed today. First thing I'm going to do is have y'all shout out yourselves where we can find y'all on social media and the like. And then we're going to talk about what's going up in the next panel, as well as some other stuff going on at the Podcast Book Club convention. So, Finch, would you like to go ahead and shout yourself out?
Yeah, you can usually find me haunting Podcast Book Club, of course, but my sci-fi audio drama I talked about is called Spacepex, and the website is just spacepexpod.com. You can find me online, basically everywhere at Smallsies. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Very good. Excited to hear more about Space Specs as well. I love that title. Alicia, did you want to shout yourself out? Tell us where to find you.
Absolutely. You can read or listen to most of the things I've done over at alicia-goranson.com. I just put the link in the chat. It has links to all my audio dramas, all the books and plays. I can't believe I've done 5 plays. It
Goodness.
just, yeah, it's
Goodness gracious.
it's a
Impressive
lot.
catalog.
Oh, I want to do so much more. You don't understand. I'm working on the second season of my current podcast, and
Amazing.
the thing I like to bring out to people is how fast my system of developing podcast audio dramas has happened. It took me 3.5 years to do 12 hours of Mask of Inanna, and then it took me 9 months to do 12
Goodness.
hours of Blood Doll. So I've gotten a little better at it. Please
There
come
you
and
go.
have a
There you
listen.
go.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Alicia. Daisy, did you want to shout yourself out as well?
Uh, all of my credits can be found at daisymcnamara.com. The Gospel of Haven is currently in production on season 2. Season 1 is out now. SCP Archives is currently releasing and will be until I die. Mayfair Watch Society, I've got a few episodes on, including Water Damage this season, which is about physical disability. You can check that out if you want to.
Beautiful.
Various stuff with various people, Eelsong Studios, Eeler's Choice, Love Names, all that stuff. Check out those people. It's all on the website.
Very good. Daisy and Finch, if y'all want to drop websites in the chat, feel free to do so.
Oh, sure.
Once again, my name is Rowan. If y'all want to check out my stuff, it's twinstrangersproductions.com. That is my audio drama network, so everything can be found there. So, once again, thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you so much for the insight. Y'all have been wonderful. Thank you to the chat for listening and for the questions. Very, very great to hear from y'all. We're going to go ahead and shout out the next panel coming up, which is going to be the High Nine live show with Motzi. A lot of people might know of her and her show. We're very excited about that. And then we would also love to recommend the AuFiCon Artist Alley, where you can find some people who are doing art commissions, different podcast merchandise, all that kind of stuff. So definitely take a look at that. It's all in the podcast club, book club Discord as well. So lovely, lovely to have y'all here. Lovely to have y'all on the panel. And I thank you so much. And I cannot wait for more.